Arts programs throughout Massachusetts are faced with a possible cut in the new state budget. Governor Baker filed a budget that calls for a slight increase, but the House wants to cut spending on the arts by 28%. The House budget was filed this week following a show of support for arts programs recently, with hundreds of people marching to the State House. To share some thoughts on how and why the funding matters are the Executive Director of MASSCreative, Matt Wilson, and Dorchester-based artist and advocate Aziza Robinson-Goodnight. Thank you both very much for being with us. I want to start with Matt. This mixed message from the State House, how are you reading this?
It's disappointing to us. In a time where the national government, the recent Trump budget is threatening to zero out the National Endowment for the Arts and zero out federal funding. We were looking for the state to come in to really be champions on the arts. So we're disappointed with the House proposal to cut the arts budget by 28%, but we're already seeing support growing from the rank and file in the House to reverse that and actually add $2 million to the budget. So the budget process is just starting. It's a long process, and we really need to speak up.
Goodnight. There's more to this than just legacy institutions. This is about neighborhoods. So what do you see at stake here?
I see a lot at stake here. With the Mass Cultural Council, the lead on creating cultural districts, funding for cultural districts in neighborhoods of color trickle down to our legacies. As the city is being gentrified quick and fast, it's important that there's money in the budget to preserve legacies of the beings that are there now.
Now, you've also been concerned about the potential the arts have to address something like unemployment and poverty. It seems like how do you fill in that gap? How does that work exactly?
The arts empowers people to be independent entrepreneurs at a time when in the city we only have an 8.8% unemployment rate. So for youth who have the least amount of jobs, pushing them to be independent entrepreneurs by using things or their creative skills is a way to bridge those gaps.
Okay. Coming back to Matt, what about the economic development effect? What's the most important thing to know about that?
Yeah, the arts are just integral into who we are as Boston and who we are as Massachusetts. Whether it's employing creative workers to the nonprofit institutions that hire tens of thousands of people across the state. It's an investment that makes sense. The return on it is significant, and I think the country now is we're really looking at what our core values are, what is important to us, and I think the Trump budget is really getting a lot of people thinking about what's important and what do we need to invest in. And the arts is something that is not only important to us individually, but is important for the economic well-being of our communities.
Yeah, and this is BNN News. We're talking with Matt Wilson from MASSCreative and arts advocate Aziza Robinson-Goodnight. Aziza, talk about what's going on with some of these cultural districts, because you got one that's being talked about that you've been involved in Roxbury, around Dudley Square and Elliott Square, in Jamaica Plain and Hyde Square. There's even talk, I think, along Dorchester Avenue in the Vietnamese community. What do the communities get from this?
It gives a lot to communities. It allows communities to be seen on the tourism website, which allows people. So cultural districts have the ability to bring lots of economic viability to neighborhoods. We know that cultural institutions bring lots of money to the things around it. We look at the Boston Symphony Orchestra. They bring millions of dollars to just the businesses around them. So being on the tourism website as a cultural district in neighborhoods that are not usually seen as touristy areas is a tremendous economic. It will make a tremendous economic impact.
So I think going to some cultural event in Roxbury, you go to a restaurant afterwards, or maybe you bring your kids, they get excited about the arts and they get involved. So you got all these ripple effects here.
Yes. Yeah, and it's interesting, in the this summer there's actually going to be a report that comes out as part of a national report called the Economic Prosperity Report. That's going to show the ripple effect that the arts and cultural community has. It's not only that you're going to buy a ticket, but you're going to have dinner, you're walking around buying stuff. And so as we get into the summer, we'll have some real good data that shows the true impact of the arts and culture here in Boston and across the state.
Aziza, another project that you were involved in concerned getting people more engaged with the Fairmount Indigo rail service, because there was this rail line and sometimes people just didn't even know there was a station there, that it could get you where you wanted to go, and you tried to do something about that with the arts.
Yeah, so I worked with 15 other artists. There were 4 artists in residence, 1 artist in transit, and then artist fellows, and we worked together to kind of invigorate the spaces around the train stops, so that we could bring to light that there is actually a train there that will get you into downtown way quicker than trying to take the bus and taking another system. But also, we also did a party on the train so that we could celebrate the neighborhoods and the arts and culture around the neighborhoods as well.
Matt, your organization has also been saying that instead of just stopping cuts, that there ought to be some increases. Where would you like to see increases in the budget?
Yeah, I mean, to provide some history, 25 years ago, the state was investing $27 million a year into the arts and cultural community. This past year, it was $14 million, nearly a half. There's so many opportunities for us, both with youth arts. There's a new initiative that the MCC is doing around accessibility to arts to make sure all have accessibility to arts. And just to the local cultural councils. Every town in Massachusetts has a local cultural council where grassroots arts and cultural institutions and artists are funded. There's just a dying need where folks can take $500, $1,000 and create incredible projects, which Aziza knows creates a real sense of place in their neighborhoods. So, we're asking for a modest $2 million increase from $14 to $16 million this year, and we are really looking for our legislators to be champions on this.
Aziza, one thing you've experienced as far as creating, I guess, a sense of place, or at least a hub for artists, was at the Piano Factory. Mm-hmm. Explain why that's so important.
It's important to so being a part of the Piano Factory community, it allowed me to just be free. Like, the arts allowed you to be free and express yourself and not feel boxed in, which allowed you to navigate the world in a different way. And I really, as an adult, I understand that. And I see that other adults that might not have been exposed in the way, that we can just see the world in a different way.
Right. And finally, Matt, if people want to keep up with this, you've got some details on the website there?
Yeah, our website at masscreative.org will give you a sense of what's happening in the legislature and opportunities for people to engage as real arts advocates and to provide the opportunity to tell your story on why arts and culture are important to your life and to the communities of Boston.
Thank you both, Matt Wilson and Aziza Robinson-Goodnight. Up ahead, going the distance on bikes in this year's Hub on Wheels.